I'm Kyla Bennett. I work for PEER, Public Employees for Environmental Responsibility. I'm the chief scientist there. PEER is a national nonprofit. We're based outside of Washington, D.C. I am in Massachusetts, not too far from here. I work in the New England and North Atlantic, but I also am the scientist for the entire organization. We are a whistleblower group, so we support and defend local, state, and federal employees who work in the environmental arena. They work in conservation commissions, DEP, EPA, Fish and Wildlife Service, things like that. We have been working on PFAS since 2018, and I want to talk to you today about why I think that the Aries proposal is so dangerous for you. And just as an aside, the reason I'm wearing a mask, I am not sick. I am very high risk for COVID. I don't usually do in-person things. I'm high risk because I had a brain tumor a couple of years ago that I firmly believe was given to me from my PFAS contaminated water from our wells not too far from here. And because of my brain tumors, I am high risk. So anyway, what we're going to be talking about today is PFAS and gasification, why you should be concerned. So what are PFAS? PFAS is an acronym for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and that's why we call it PFAS, because that's really a mouthful. There are thousands of these chemicals in this class. EPA thinks there are about 14,000 of them. We don't know for sure, and it really depends on how they're defined. EPA does not even have a consistent definition of PFAS, but we do know that it's a very, very large class of chemicals. The one thing that they all have in common is a carbon-fluorine backbone, if you will. And the carbon-fluorine bond is one of the strongest bonds known in organic chemistry, which is why PFAS have been given the nickname forever chemicals, because they simply do not naturally break down or degrade. All of them are persistent, as you can see up there. Many of them bioaccumulate, which means they build up in your body and they stay there for years and years and years. And all of those that we have tested are highly toxic. In fact, just this year, EPA announced that at least 2 of them are known to cause cancer. They are used as water and stain repellents and surfactants, and they are ubiquitous. They were discovered by Chemours scientists in 1938. Literally, these scientists were in a lab and they were playing around with chemicals, and one of them spilled something on his shoe and then water after that, and the water beat it up. And he immediately thought, wow, this could be handy. And indeed it was. PFAS are found in so many of our day-to-day products. They're in our carpets. They're in stain proofing for carpets. They are in upholstered furniture, in food packaging, like the wrappers around hamburgers when you go to a fast food place, or microwave popcorn bags. They're in our makeup. They're in tents and backpacks and rain gear. They are in firefighting training, firefighting turnout gear, and their foam, which we're trying to get rid of. They are in baby car seats. They're virtually everywhere. And it's a problem. States are starting to regulate PFAS in the regulatory vacuum left by EPA. EPA has yet to regulate any of these chemicals, although this year they have proposed drinking water levels for 6 PFAS, and I'll get into that in a little bit. So there are 3 routes of exposure for PFAS. You can ingest it through food and water. You can inhale it when it's in ashes, dust, or smoke, and you can dermally absorb it. For example, firefighters have PFAS in the gear that they wear when they're fighting fires. They have a higher rate of cancer than anyone else in the United States. In 2019, 75% of firefighter deaths were from cancer, not from running into a burning building. A lot of them are dying of cancer. It's hard to see the slide, but it tells you all of the different health impacts that PFAS are associated with. Diabetes, poor immune response. In fact, it makes vaccines not work well. So if you have a high level of PFAS in your blood, your COVID vaccine won't work as well, or your flu shot won't work as well. It can cause developmental issues, kidney cancer, thyroid cancer, brain cancer, testicular cancer. That's one of the big ones that the firefighters are getting. They can cause preeclampsia in pregnant women. The list goes on and on and on. High cholesterol, very, very dangerous chemicals. We can only test for about 70 PFAS chemicals out of the 14,000. And we have only done toxicity data we only have toxicity data on about 29 of them. And as I said, all of them are toxic. All of them cause some health problems. We don't know if they're all carcinogens, but many of them are. Massachusetts regulates 6 PFAS in drinking water, soil, and groundwater. 2 of the what we call legacy PFAS are PFOA and PFOS. Oh, there we go. And those are the ones that we know the most about. If you haven't watched the movie Dark Waters, I highly suggest that you spend some time this weekend watching it. It's a docudrama about a true case in West Virginia that really brought national attention to the issue of PFAS. How toxic are PFAS? Currently, the states that regulate PFAS regulate them in parts per trillion. And that's a really hard number to grasp. So in order to grasp that concept, I want to let you know that 1 part per trillion is like 1 second of time in over 317 centuries. Tiny, tiny amounts. So when you hear industry telling you, oh, it's just very small amounts, that should not make you feel comfortable because very small amounts can kill you. In March of 2023, EPA proposed drinking water standards. The MCL stands for maximum contaminant level for 6 PFAS, PFOA and PFOS, the 2 legacy ones that we know the most about. Then something called Gen X, which is a substitute for PFOA, which is supposed to be safer. It may actually be more dangerous. We don't know yet. And then 3 other ones. They also said in their proposal that PFOA and PFOS are likely to cause cancer, and there is no dose below which either chemical is considered safe. No dose. So even though they've set the proposed limits in drinking water at 4 parts per trillion, their max MCLG, which is their maximum contaminant level goal, is 0. They want there to be none of this in our water because it's that dangerous. So the assumption behind EPA's proposed regulation is that our exposure is 20% from drinking water, which means that 80% is coming from something other than drinking water. It's coming from the food you eat, like fish, meat, milk, baked goods, whatever, vegetables. But it's also coming from inhalation and dermal absorption. Because they're forever chemicals, because you can't destroy them, EPA literally had a contest. And they said, we will pay someone $50,000 if you can figure out how to destroy this stuff. People don't know how to destroy it. That's part of the problem. So it just cycles through the environment. If you incinerate it, it goes up into the air, can travel as far as 150 kilometers, or it can just land right there, contaminate your water and your soil. If you put it in a wastewater treatment plant, it actually can create more PFAS. Studies show wastewater treatment plants were not designed to break down PFAS. And actually what we're finding is that there's more PFAS in the effluent of a wastewater treatment plant than the influent. In other words, the stuff going in to be cleaned has less PFAS than the stuff coming out of the pipe at the end. Why? Because PFAS chemistry is really, really complicated. I am not a chemist. I'm a PhD ecologist, but I know enough chemistry of PFAS to be scared. I'm also an environmental lawyer. But what happens is these things recombine during the treatment process and actually create more PFAS. So we can't burn them, we can't landfill them, and we can't put them in wastewater treatment plants. We just can't destroy them. They just cycle through the environment continuously. We have learned over the past few years that there are massive amounts of PFAS in biosolids. The lower half of that graph are biosolid-based fertilizers. You can go to Lowe's or Home Depot, the garden section, and you can buy a bag of biosolids. They sell it. EPA calls it beneficial reuse. It is a good fertilizer, but we are finding tens of thousands of parts per trillion of PFOA, PFOS, and all of these other PFAS in every single biosolids that we test. And remember, EPA said there's no safe level of these. So what does Aries say? I took these words right from their website. And I want you to pay attention to the words that I have in red. And it's very cagey language. I was going to say Weasley. My husband said I should not say Weasley, but honestly, it's Weasley language. The operating temperatures should give time for thermal decomposition of most PFAS compounds. Remember, no safe level. Does the should and the most make you feel comfortable? Because it shouldn't. They say the thermal oxidizer at 1800 degrees Fahrenheit gives another opportunity for these compounds to be decomposed, to be destroyed to some degree. To some degree. That does not mean 100%. They said appreciable or complete reductions of PFAS contamination compared to the incoming biosolids. Well, if you've got 30,000 parts per trillion in the sludge coming in, what's an appreciable destruction? Are we ending up with 1,000 parts per trillion? Whatever it is, it's too much. And then they say it is expected that the gasifier will be effective at thermally cracking most, but not all, PFAS chemicals. These are all huge red flags. So when Aries says to you, we're destroying PFAS, this is what they're really saying. They're not destroying it all. This was also from their website. Again, hard to see, but you can see at the bottom, I think it says 1.507. That's parts per billion. That's what's left after they burn it. So we have to move the decimal place over three times. So that's 1,507 parts per trillion that's left. That is not destroying PFAS. It's reducing it, but it's not destroying. So their conclusion is because of the lack of gas analysis in their testing. In other words, they did not test the emissions coming out of the stack. They tested the final product, but they did not test the emissions coming out of the stack. Because of the lack of gas analysis in this testing, it remains possible that some of the PFAS was volatilized but not decomposed. That means it went up into the air and it's going to be polluting your community. Then they go on to say further testing and gas analysis will be needed to confirm the decomposition of PFAS. You are going to be guinea pigs. Full stop. What do other scientists say? There have been a lot of recent research. All of these quotes are from papers that came out between 2021 and 2023. So very recent research. They're saying additional research is needed on the fate and transformation products of PFAS in the residuals, oils, and gases from thermal treatment technologies. Additional research is warranted to understand all potential PFAS transformation emission routes and optimal air pollution emission control strategies for this technology. This last bullet is the one that scares me the most. Tetrafluoromethane, CF4 is the chemical structure. That is a PFAS. It has the highest degradation temperature of approximately 2,192 to 2,550 degrees Fahrenheit. They are not getting that high. They said, I think 1,800 is the highest they'll get for some small periods of time. Look how far that is, 1,800 to 2,552. Scientists are saying, given this, it has been suggested that CF4 should be used as a surrogate for all potential contamination. In other words, if CF4 is not being destroyed, we can't assume that other ones are being destroyed. Some people think that's a little bit conservative. I think if we're talking about human health, it is not conservative and it's necessary. Thermal technologies are energy intensive and have the potential to create harmful byproducts, including fluorinated products of incomplete combustion. That means smaller chain PFAS, smaller number of carbon, but they're still PFAS and they're still going to be there. Further development of analytical methods capable of identifying and quantifying thermal PFAS decomposition and recombination is urgently needed. Now, remember when I said there were 14,000 PFAS? We can only test for about 70 of them. So when Aries is saying we destroyed PFAS, they're saying we destroyed some of the 70 PFAS that we can talk about, we can test for. They aren't testing for the rest of them. So we cannot say that they have been destroyed. This is one of my favorite sayings, and you should remember it and shout it back at everyone who's giving you a talk about how safe this stuff is. The absence of evidence does not mean the evidence of absence. In other words, just because we don't have the data doesn't mean it's safe. We don't have the data because there are so many PFAS out there that we can't test for. If we can't test for them, we don't know their toxicity, right? And the reason we don't know what these PFAS are is because companies are saying that they're confidential business information, or CBI. We're not allowed to know. In fact, one PFAS manufacturer, Solvay, actually sued a lab in Canada because they were reverse engineered some PFAS and figured out a formula. They got sued for figuring out the chemical formula of a chemical that's dangerous. You can only test for 70. Some PFAS are not destroyed at approximately 2550 degrees F, and we don't know what the PFAS emissions will be. On the next slide, I just have all of the references, which I can email to anyone where I got those quotes from, but that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I think we have one more speaker first. Thank you so much.
It's going to sound kind of naive, and but I'm trying to think about some of the conversations I had. So this is not my voice saying this, but I can guarantee somebody would say to me, "It's everywhere. It's in everything. It's in my house. Why is this worse to have it?" So I want to go against.
Sure. And since we are recording, I'm just going to kind of repeat back that question, which is, if PFAS is so proliferant in the consumer products that we use in our household products, what is the difference between having PFAS coming from this facility?
I hear that all the time, constantly. We hear it from everybody, even regulators. And here's the answer. When I found out I was sick, I made an effort to reduce my PFAS risk. I got rid of everything in my house that I thought contained PFAS. I had my blood tested this past June, and I have some of the lowest PFAS levels in the nation because of my efforts. That is my choice. You can choose to go to the store and buy a nonstick pan that has PFAS in it right now. I wouldn't do it. You can do that. If Aries opens up and this PFAS is coming out of the stack, that choice is no longer yours. It is being imposed on you. That's one answer. The other answer is there are efforts underway in many states, including Massachusetts, to ban PFAS in products. So I liken PFAS contamination to climate change. If we stopped burning fossil fuels tomorrow, the levels of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere is going to stay at about 420 parts per million for decades, if not hundreds of years before it comes down. Same thing with PFAS. If we stop putting it in products and stop emitting it, it's going to take a while, but it will eventually come down. The more we use, remember it's bioaccumulative and it also biomagnifies throughout the food chain. The more we use, the worse it's going to get. So you have a certain load. Almost everybody in the world has PFAS in their blood right now. But the more you use, the higher that level goes and the higher your risk for those health impacts. If you're going to be breathing this stuff, it is going to increase your load. You can minimize it yourself. This is a choice that's being foisted on you that shouldn't be. I hope that helps.
I have a question for you as well. Thank you for your talk. If everyone decided, all right, that's it for nonstick cookware, I'm gonna throw it out. What do we do with it?
It's hazardous waste. It's a great question. We don't know. We don't have the answer. Same thing with all the sewage sludge. We don't have an answer of what to do with it. Some scientists are proposing that they get put in some kind of like Yucca Mountain situation, like nuclear waste, until we can figure out how to destroy it, or put it someplace with very little rain until it naturally degrades over decades, hundreds of years, thousands of years. We don't have the answer, but it is, I mean, it's We have, in my town, I live in Easton, not too far from here. We had to spend $10 million to put in a water filtration plant. The filters that we use in our house that until our plant, it's still not online. It's been 3 years now, still not on. So I can't drink my water. But we have a filter in our kitchen. Those filters that we change every 6 months, they're hazardous waste. We can't just throw them out. Same thing with Teflon pans. You should not just put them in the garbage. They are hazardous waste and nobody knows what to do with them. There is no good answer, unfortunately. But you can get rid of them yourself and stop using them.
I've heard if you put, like, if you vacuum, you use like a HEPA filter. That would help take out, the PFAS from the rugs. However, same thing now, what do you do with the HEPA filter when you want to discard it?
Right. So I got rid of all the carpets in my house. I don't have any carpets. I don't have upholstered furniture that's treated with PFAS. Home Depot and Lowe's no longer sell carpets with PFAS. IKEA doesn't have any PFAS in their furniture. Companies are starting to do this. My rain jacket no longer has PFAS. I got one from Jack Wolfskin. You can find alternatives. It's not easy, but you can. But again, these are all personal choices. The other thing is that women tend to have less of a PFAS load than men because of their menstrual period. A lot of it comes out in blood every month if you're prior to menopause. Also, if you eat organic vegetables, because believe it or not, biosolids are allowed to be used on conventional farms for fertilizer, and it gets taken up by those plants, by those fruits and vegetables. There are farms in Maine, New Mexico, Michigan that have had to shut down because of the contamination of the meat and the milk and the cows. So there are ways to minimize your own risk and to get it out of your body, eating a lot of organic green leafy vegetables. And I know that sounds like a really privileged thing to say, but you can buy cheap organic vegetables at Walmart, at Target, at Aldi's, at Trader Joe's. I know it's traditionally more expensive, but it's your health. And you can find them just as cheap as conventional things. So yes, you're right. You could vacuum with a HEPA filter, but then the filter itself is probably filled with PFAS dust if you have treated carpets.